Hello, my name is Lauren Sloan, and I will be discussing the effects of resilience on a person's ability to overcome abusive behaviors and escape unhealthy environments stemming from experiencing abuse from parents. In the U.S. alone, the National Children Alliance states that more than 600,000 children are abused each year. These children have been found by the U.S. Department of Justice to be 40% more likely to be arrested as juvenile delinquents and adult criminals. James Fox, a criminologist from Northeastern University, estimates that by the 21st century, murders committed by teenagers will skyrocket as the 39 million children now under the age of 10 swell the ranks of teenagers by 20%. This problem of cyclical violence, which looms over the future of our society, brings us to a search for a conclusion and a solution. Support from various studies leads to the conclusion that people who experience abuse must have resilience in order to overcome their adverse situations, in order to prevent a cycle of abuse. An example of how people have used resilience to overcome their adverse situations is found in the stimulus piece that evaluated the people of Haiti after they experienced a traumatic earthquake. They were not defeated by their adverse circumstances, but continued to persevere and have hope for a normal life. Embedded in the history of their culture is a popular Haitian Creole saying, which translates to bend, bend, don't break. This saying describes how to be flexible with your resilience without reaching a breaking point. To solve the problem of cyclical abuse, we have to understand what causes a person to break under the impact of abuse and what causes a person to be resilient. A person's abusive behavior is commonly a result of a coping mechanism which stems from the violent events of their own childhood. In a study from the Subdepartment of Clinical Health Psychology, it was found that the younger an individual would be, the more likely his or her chances would become to be easily affected by the stressful and adverse situations. The hard impact that trauma and abuse inflicted on young children has been found by Dodge, a professor of psychology and neuroscience at Duke University, to lead them to suffer neuropsychological and cognitive impairments that adversely affect their ability to positively cope with and respond to stress or other adverse external influences. Abuse from a parent leads to unhealthy coping with emotions, which later can be unleashed in the form of more abuse. Forms of coping are described by Boxer, a psychology professor at Rutgers University, to involve distancing oneself psychologically or physically from a stressful event, acting out in anger, or retreating inward. Built-up anger, stress, and emotions eventually become the root of dysfunction and can lead to a person lashing out in violence. The cycle of generational abuse is continued because when victims are faced with challenging or adverse situations, they lack resilience and knowledge of healthy coping mechanisms. Although many children who grow up in unstable environments develop abusiveness towards people, there have been high-risk children who overcome their circumstances using resilience. Two studies that evaluated the people of Haiti and the quiet children who were resilient in the face of adversity found that they possessed certain traits and skills. The stimulus piece, which evaluated the Haitian people, found that resilient individuals possessed traits including the ability to solve problems, the capacity to initiate and retain friendships, a belief that they have control over what happens to them, a sense of hope and purpose, and an affectionate bond with a significant other. From the Kauai study, the high-risk children were described to be engaging to other people, portray good communication and problem-solving skills, have the ability to recruit substitute caregivers, have a valued talent or hobby, and have faith that their own actions make a positive difference in their own lives. The two different cultures were resilient because they were not defeated by their own circumstances, but continued to persevere, believe in themselves, and have hope for a normal life. The three main steps when trying to change an abusive behavior or environment are: individuals must recognize their situation, they must have an awareness of their current or future behavioral problems, and they must believe they are capable of changing their habits through practice. Young adults in the Kauai study had the ability to recognize their situation, and as a result, they left stressful home environments and sought extra-familial environments. With these steps, resilient people can avoid falling into abusive behavior and improve their environments. Some people believe that having resilience can make a person's abusive situation go from bad to worse. The stimulus piece, The Dark Side of Resilience, explains how too much resilience can make a person overly tolerant of adversity. People who tolerate the intolerable for too long find it hard to recognize that they need to escape and their abusive relationship or situation. Although too much resilience can have a negative effect on someone's situation, the right amount of resilience is needed to overcome their challenges. When we go back to the resilient Haitians, we remember their famous saying that is embedded in their culture: bend, bend, don't break. This saying describes how a person should be flexible in their resilience without reaching a breaking point. In order to prevent a continuous cycle of abuse, children must learn how to be resilient and healthily cope with their situations. The study of the high-risk Kauai children explains how creating more resilient children can result from decreasing their exposure to risk factors and teaching them how to increase their self-esteem and find sources of support. We can also build children's resilience by showing them how to healthily cope with their emotions and teaching them problem-solving and communication skills. A plan was created by Gene Stephens, who is a professor at the College of Criminal Justice, to build more resilient children. Inside schools, education programs can be put in place that teach positive reinforcement, promote nonviolent conflict resolution, initiate ethical and cultural awareness, and that emphasize values such as respect, responsibility, and restraint. Outside of school, extra programs can be created to involve children in sports, provide in-school jobs and childcare, and offer mentors and therapy. Sports provide something to value and work to achieve. Jobs require problem-solving and communication skills. Childcare prevents neglect at home. Most importantly, free mentoring and therapy teaches people how to healthily cope with their feelings in home environments. With these easily and safely accessible programs, children can build their self-esteem and have hope for their future, have a safe space to express their emotions, and learn how to be resilient. In order to cease the problem of cyclical abuse, victims who experience abuse must have resilience to overcome their adverse situations. Flash from the stimulus piece concerning the Haitian survivors adds that resilience includes people's ability to tolerate stress and to be open-minded and disciplined while having a low tolerance for unacceptable behavior in others. Children who never learn how to be resilient commonly find themselves on the path of violence, crime, and drugs, which act as coping mechanisms for their emotions. Resilience is one of the most important aspects when trying to overcome adverse situations. More importantly, finding the perfect balance of resilience so a victim can bend but not break strengthens a person's resilience without allowing themselves to fall into a cycle of violence. The most efficient method to growing resilience among victims of abuse is through programs inside and outside of school that teach victims healthy coping mechanisms, problem-solving and communication skills, and give them a sense of hope and purpose for the future of their life. Teaching resilience not only helps individuals overcome their adverse situations, but it also builds a resilient society filled with people who are equipped to solve the world's greatest problems. Thank you. And that's my work cited.
Lauren,
Yes.
how did your research question evolve as you moved through the research process?
So at first, I had the question, do individuals later in their life show abuse towards others? Is there a cycle of generational abuse? Does it exist? But as I was researching, I found overwhelming evidence that that was true, and it makes sense. And I realized that there was already so much research on the effect of individuals who were abused. So that's why I wanted to focus more on the solution.
Lauren, what are the implications of your findings to your community?
So again, just researching how big of an effect, how many people are abused, in my problem, and just researching that, I wanted to, the people that are abused are more likely to become criminals, and I wanted to find the solution, because that's the best way to making a better society that's more resilient and that's more equipped to solve problems